Welcome, welcome. Today we're going to be practicing Yin Yoga. Today's class specifically is going to be geared towards the hips and getting them opened up. So for my props today, I have a bolster that I'm sitting on. If you do not have a bolster at home, you can use a couch cushion, or you can also use a firm pillow. I also have a couple of blankets here with me. One blanket is fine, but I do like to use 2 blankets when I get to Shavasana. That's personal preference, but you can totally get away with this practice with just 1 blanket. And then I also have an eye pillow, which I will use in Shavasana because I like to use that just to help to release all of the senses and drown everything out. I have a couple of blocks here, and then I also have a sandbag. Sandbag is completely optional, but I always have one with me just in case I decide to use it in my practice. So we'll go ahead and get started with some breathing to begin. So you'll sit comfortably. You might sit up on your blanket or maybe a bolster, and then just start to gently close the eyes. Drop the shoulders down the back. Take a couple of deep breaths. Then bring the right hand to the diaphragm, the left hand to the heart. Take a breath in. Hold at the top. Exhale through the mouth. Inhale through the nose. Hold. Exhale through the mouth. And keep going just like that. Then after your final exhale, you'll just start to breathe normally. Taking a couple of breaths. Then you might take a moment to set an intention or a dedication for your practice. And bringing that to heart center, we'll open with an Om. Inhaling. And then we'll begin to move into the poses. We're going to start with a square pose. So if you were seated on a prop, you might remove that. And then start by bringing the right shin in front of the left. You want the shins to be parallel with the edge of your mat, and make sure that there's space between your legs. Then lift your heart with an inhale, folding forward with your exhale. And slowly start to walk it back up. Releasing the legs. You might straighten through the knees. Maybe rocking them side to side. Giving a moment for blood to flow back through. And then we'll switch and do the other side, crossing the left shin in front of the right this time. Again, making sure that the shins are parallel with the edge of your mat. Lifting your heart with your inhale, folding forward with your exhale. You might notice differences in the sides, and this is totally normal. You just want to make sure not to internalize that difference. Don't label it as good or bad. Just make a recognition of it. Notice where your work is at. Then start to walk it back up. Slowly releasing the legs. Maybe straightening the knees again. You might even place the hands behind you and just lift the heart. Then for our next pose, we're going to work with caterpillar, which is a forward fold. So you might need your bolster for this or blankets. You can take the blanket and roll it up to place it under the knees, or you can use the bolster to place under the knees. And then you might also grab a block here to place under the forehead, or to even place the arms over top so then your forehead can rest on the arms. And as you're ready, you'll fold forward, just letting the legs drape over top of your prop, and then letting gravity do the work for you. Slowly roll the spine back up, bringing the head up last. Shoulder blades moving down the back. And then set your props to the side. And we're just going to do a reverse tabletop to counter, placing the hands behind the hips, feet come to the mat, and then lift the hips. The head might drop back. And then for our next pose, we're going to work with a half saddle. And for this, I'm going to prop up with a couple of blocks as well as the bolster, just to give me a little bit more lift. I don't want to go too deep into this pose, as it can be a little strenuous on the knee. And I have had surgery on this knee, so I do want to be a little bit more gentle with it. But you can go deeper. You can use the bolster behind you without the blocks, or you can use no prop behind you. And then you're going to keep the left leg extended, bend through the right knee, grab that ankle, and then rotate the knee down to the mat. You might have to roll your calf out of the way here, and then you want to make sure that the heel is outside of the hip rather than underneath of it. And then you should be pretty close to the prop behind you. And you'll just start to lay back and settle in. Arms can fall out wherever they go naturally, making sure there's no pain in that knee. If there is, then you might lift your prop up a little bit higher so that you have a little bit more space here. Then you'll slowly start to come back up. Pressing into the hands, and then release that right leg. You might massage the kneecap for a moment. And then we're just going to switch sides. Bending through the left knee, dropping that knee to the mat. Again, making sure that the heel is outside of the hip rather than underneath of it. And then starting to lay back as you're ready. And settling in. And slowly start to come back up. Releasing the left leg. Maybe massaging that kneecap. Then we're going to move into a wide leg forward fold next. You might turn sideways on your mat for this so that you can use the cushion of the mat underneath of your heels. And then you might use a bolster with a couple of blocks, creating a little ramp for your bolster, just like we did with saddle just now. Lifting it a little higher. Taking the legs out wide. Now, if this is a lot on the hamstrings or the inner legs, you can also take your blanket, roll it up, and place it under the knees. You can also do that if you find that your feet roll inwards or outwards. That'll help to prevent that roll. Using sandbags here also helps to prevent that roll. Then you'll set up as high or as low as you need. You might rest forearms on the bolster, or you might go ahead and bring one cheek to the bolster. And then with your inhale, start to walk it back up, removing the props, gently bringing the legs back in towards each other. You might do some windshield wipers here, just countering that external rotation, getting a little bit of an internal one. we're going to set up for a twist next. This won't get into the hips quite as much, but it is just good to always get the spine twisting a little bit, and it will still get a little bit of an external rotation in one hip while doing an internal rotation in the other hip. We're going to work with the deer pose, and you can set this up with a couple of blocks underneath of your bolster, or you can use just the bolster. If you don't have a bolster, you can also take a couple of blocks and just place a blanket over top of them. Either one is fine. And you want to set them up so that they are outside of your right hip to begin and angled diagonally away from you. Then bend the knees up to the ceiling, drop them out to the right side. This is one where I like to use my sandbag. If you have one, you can use it here. This just helps to ground that back hip a little bit. And sometimes it can be difficult to get it placed properly. So if you find it like falling off, that's not uncommon at all. Then you'll turn toward the prop and then start to bring the chest down towards it, resting one cheek on the prop and then settling in. Then slowly start to press yourself back up. You might take a twist towards the left. And then release the legs, removing the sandbag if you had one, and just straighten the knees. Maybe doing some windshield wipers or massaging the kneecaps. And then we'll take that same pose on the left side. Moving the props so that they're outside of the left hip on a diagonal. And then dropping the knees to the left this time. Maybe you grab your sandbag, turning towards the props, and then laying down. And then you'll begin to press yourself back up. Again, maybe twisting to the right side to counter a little. And then releasing the legs. Straightening through the knees. Maybe rocking them side to side. Maybe massaging the kneecaps. And we're going to get into the inner thigh a little bit and do a different type of external rotation for the hips. We're going to work with frog pose here. So I'm going to use 2 blocks and a bolster just because this bolster is a little bit thinner. You might use just your bolster, just depending on how deep you want to go or how deep you can go. And then I'm also going to take one of my blankets and open it up. And in fact, since I've got 2, I'm just going to use both of them. But if you just have one, then you can unfold it multiple times and then place it across your mat. And this is just to help cushion the knees so that you're not having to put them on a hard surface, especially because the knees can be a little tender since there's just primarily bone there. Then you'll bring the hands to the mat, coming to hands and knees, and start to take the knees out wide. You don't need to go too far with this, only as far as the body allows naturally. And then one thing you want to make sure of is that the knee is in line with the hips and in line with the ankle. And then you'll settle in, coming down to your prop, resting a cheek or the forehead on your prop. And you'll start to slowly come back up, moving rather slow to come out of this pose, as it can be more intense on the body. And we also want to make sure that we're not moving too fast, creating discourse in the nervous system. Coming to hands and knees to start. Maybe swaying the hips back and forth. Before sinking the hips back and coming to a child's pose. And I'm going to use my bolster here for this, just to give me a little something to lay over top of and then settle in. Then start to slowly press yourself back up. You might place the hands and tuck the toes, lifting the hips up and back for a downward facing dog here. And then bring the knees back to the mat. And we'll set up for a reclined butterfly next. For this, I'm going to use the bolster behind me. And then again, because this bolster is a little bit on the thinner side, I'm also going to stack my blankets on top of it, just to give me a little bit more lift here. That's optional, you don't have to do that. You can also use your blocks underneath of the bolster to create a little ramp, just like we did in half saddle as well as straddle pose or the wide leg forward fold. But I'm going to actually use my blocks for underneath of my knees here. And I'll show you what that looks like. Bringing your seat to the mat. And you want the bolster to run the length of your spine. Then bringing bottoms of the feet together, you'll drop the knees out to the sides. And then this is where you're going to place the blocks underneath of the knees. This is especially helpful if you have any pain in your hips as you start to go back. That will help to keep the legs a little higher and help take that pain away. And then as you hold the pose longer, you might start to move them away, let the legs fall lower, just as they're ready to go ahead and open up more. Then you'll lay back and settle in. Arms might fall to your sides, or you might rest them on top of the belly. This is where, if you have an eye pillow or maybe a cloth that you would like to place over your eyes, you can do that, as we will stay here for the remainder of the practice, treating this as our Shavasana. You'll start inviting some deep breaths in. Maybe in through the nose, out through the mouth. Maybe you stretch the arms overhead. And then gently guiding the knees back towards each other. You'll come up to seated. Just hugging the knees for a moment. Taking a moment to soak in the practice. And then coming up, keeping the eyes closed or soft. You'll take a moment to reaffirm your intention or your dedication. And then we'll close with an Om. Inhale. Thank you for practicing with me.